Now just I want to move to, man of many talents. So just shifting over as part of the gym and the upgrades with the Matt's Gymnasium, Dance Refuge.
Correct.
You've talked to me a little bit about it, but I think of you more as a gymnast, but it's clear that you also have a love of dancing.
So to make a long story short, I would say maybe a year ago, my parents were like, oh, we don't know what to do. And so I was like, I know what to do. I want to keep the place the way it is and like improve it. So I ended up making this, I think it was like 27-page document on why I thought the gym was in the perfect location and all the assets it had and like what it means to the people of the community and what it means to the people who come here for practice. And so I proposed them this idea, like, why don't we help renovate the gym and just continually make this a place where the people who come can enjoy it, but also it'll be more secure for you guys in the future. And so around February of this year, the people who were leasing the front part of the studio decided to move out. And once they left, I told my mom about it, and I was like, oh, hey, like, remember I had this packet? Like, I presented it to you guys. Like, I think we should, like, move on this.
Now's the time.
Yeah, and so she was like, okay, let's do it. Let's see what happens. And, like, we started doing renovations to the front section in March, I believe. And we had a very short window to finish because I set the opening date for May 15th. So we had a bunch of stuff being done. We were working on both sides at the time. We were painting on this side, and if we had leftover paint, we would also paint in the gym. I had this whole like 3-step plan where it was like remove, renovate, and like recondition or something like that, where we had to remove like a bunch of like the older, I guess, like equipment and like things that were just collected here for no reason, and just like reinvest in the equipment so people could feel like life was being brought back into the gym. Even though like it wasn't like super dying or like in any jeopardy at all, we just decided to kind of like like have.
We all need a refresher from time to time.
Definitely, like a good spa weekend or whatever.
Exactly.
So we started doing that, and in May we had our grand opening for Dance Refuge, which is a hip-hop dance studio adjacent to Matthew Gymnastics Center, where people of like all levels can come and practice. I also have an open session kind of service. I have classes, and sometimes like I'll lease the studio out to people who want to do rehearsals for themselves if they have competitions too. That was like the sequence of events leading up to the studio here.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful space. The renovations you did are great. You put in like this beautiful dance floor, and you've got everything you need for all of the classes and everything you're doing here. Yeah. What are the classes? Is it specific age ranges? What are the specific classes that you're doing?
So right now I have a kids class that's for, I would say, kids between like 6 and maybe 11 or 12. That's just for parents, like comfort, and the kids as well. But I think anything above that, all people should practice together. Sometimes I see videos of kids in Japan or kids in Korea who are doing moves that are crazier than I could ever do, and they're like 8, and I'm just like, dude, like the game has changed. So I feel like after like middle school, everyone should be grouped together, and so the classes I offer for adults are hip hop, and so that's a all levels kind of situation where regardless of how experienced you are, there's always something that you don't know, so you could come learn that. I have a b-boying class, which is just breakdancing. I'll teach different moves, or I'll teach different concepts that people can work with.
You teach attitude too.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. Yeah, that's all part of it, performance and knowledge. I have a locking class that is taught by my friend Daniel, and so Daniel was actually on the high school team that I was on years before I was even on it. But his brother and me were the same year. So we were on the team together, and then he went to USC as well. So when I was at USC, me and his brother were roommates for a couple years. And so his brother teaches locking at another studio. And so I brought him to teach at this studio too. So I have a locking class, which is like a funk dance style, but it's also in the umbrella of hip hop. I have choreography classes, so stuff you would see in like music videos or in this competition called World of Dance. I think NBC had not a rip-off of it, but like a similar titled show. You would see style similar to that in the choreography classes, and I'm always trying to bring in people that I met through college or people that I met through dance battles or dance parties to come and teach as well. So I always have like something different for people who want it.
So yeah, following up on that, again, you know, I knew you as a gymnast. Tell me about how you became involved in dance and became a dancer and now a dance instructor.
I think I'll start way at the beginning of my dance history, I guess. So when I was in maybe 3rd or 4th grade, I was just hanging out at mats, you know, just stretching. And then my dad has this service called Open Practice where people can come in, pay like a small fee, and then just practice independently.
Which is still here today.
Yeah, it's still here. It's great. A lot of people come for it, so if you're in the area, I recommend coming through.
And we'll talk about all the information people need at the end of this.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I was just sitting there stretching, and this weird looking guy came in, and he's like, oh, hey, I'm Alvaro. And I'm like, oh, hey, what's up? And he just started stretching too. And he was like, when he first started coming here, he was like the most stiff person you like ever knew. Like he couldn't even touch his knees. Like that's how stiff he was. And he's like, yeah, I want to learn gymnastics. Like I've seen it on TV. But he hadn't had a chance to learn it. But he was going to LACC at the time, I believe. And so he found that this place was so close, he decided to come in. And so like me being like a very young, immature person, I started copying what he was doing because I was like, I'm gonna make fun of this kid because he's different than me, you know? And he's like probably like in his like maybe 18, 19, or maybe early 20s. And so I'm like this like little kid copying him, right? And he notices that I'm copying him, and then he's like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. And then he starts doing windmills, and I'm like, dude, I've never seen that before. Like, can you teach me that? And he's like, yeah, for sure. And so he's just like this nice guy who just like starts teaching me a bunch of stuff about like breakdancing, like a bunch of moves. And I'm like, oh man, this is okay. Actually, like I wasn't really like into it. Like I wanted to learn it because it was different, but I wasn't like super into it. And then like as the years went by, he brought a bunch of his friends and like his crew to come and practice, and I made good relationships with all of them. But I was at the time I was overweight as like a little kid, right? And so they gave me this nickname. Actually, they called me Tum Tum from this movie. I think it was like Ninjas 3 or something like that. There's like this little fat kid that they called Tum Tum, but he could do a bunch of crazy flips, right? And so they were like, yeah, that's what we're gonna call you because like you're little and like you're fat, but like you can do like flips as good as any of us, right? And I'm like, okay, like I'll take it, you know. And then when I moved to Palos Verdes, it was like the classic like new kid at school and everything's different, and I'm just adjusting to middle school, and that's like probably when kids are their meanest, you know. So it's like I was very scared, and the talent show came up, right? And someone recommended that I sign up for it. So I was like, dude, I don't know that much stuff, but like I'll sign up for it. And I ended up putting together like a short routine. Like it was probably like 75% gymnastics and like 25% like breakdancing moves. And I still didn't understand dancing at the time. I was just doing a bunch of tricks because they looked cool, right? And like the MC, who was an 8th grader, I was in 7th grade, was like, dude, you're really cool. Like, and he became like my 8th grade advocate for me, and he was like my biggest supporter. And he was like, I got this next guy coming out, like I call him Ninja, and then like everyone started calling me Ninja, and it was really funny. But he was like, yeah, this guy's amazing. And so like I did my routine, and like a lot of people liked it. So I became like the guy who flips at school, and like then I was like a normal kid after that.
Your gymnastics background, it kind of saved you in
Oh,
that
definitely.
situation.
Yeah, if I didn't have that, I don't know where I would have ended up. But after the talent show, this older woman, I guess like a parent of a student who was in the show, came up to me and was like, "Oh, hey, like you're really good at one of the high schools in the area. They have a dance team," and she's like, "I'm sure if you join, like you would be captain." And like at this point in my life, I was never captain of anything, like because I was like as I said, growing up, like I was kind of chubby, and I tried out for like football and basketball, and I didn't make the basketball team, and the football team was like a walk-on thing, so anyone could be on it, you know. So like I was like, dude, if I was like captain of something, like that would mean something, right?
Yeah.
So when I ended up going to the high school, everyone there was, to me, was really good at dancing, and I was like, wow, everyone's like actually really good. But like one of the first practices, the coach was like, hey, like I heard you can flip or something, and I was like, yeah, and he's like, show me, and so I showed him, and everyone was like, damn, dude, this guy's a freshman, and he's already flipping, because usually like when you learn it when you're a junior or senior, and they started teaching me all these moves, and I was like, oh yeah, it's pretty easy, like it's not that different than like some other thing that I learned from
You
gymnastics.
just kind of transferred all that.
Yeah, and like I still felt like I didn't know how to dance. Like I knew a bunch of moves, but I didn't know how to dance, right? And so when we had like our first actual team meeting, we had to stand up, like say our name, like where we were from, and like why we joined. And I was like, oh, I joined choreo because I want to learn how to dance. And like everyone started laughing or whatever, and they were like, dude, this guy knows how to dance already. Like, why is he here? And I'm like, no. Like my rhythm was non-existent. Like body control for dancing is like a lot different than it is for gymnastics. It's similar, and like you can build off of it, but I feel like rhythm is like a special thing that you don't really get from tumbling. So yeah, so there's just like so much about like the art of dance that I didn't know, but I wanted to learn. But like as like my passion for learning like the art of dance grew, I started watching more documentaries on hip hop and breaking, and I learned like the history and the culture, and I just became like obsessed with it. So even like if I had like 3 hours of homework to do after school, I would still like spend an hour on YouTube watching either dance battles or people talking about like the history of hip hop or something, whatever it may be. And so like I had like an endless supply of I don't know what the word is for it, like a inspiration to draw from. And so like I was like super creative, and I was like looking through all these like years of music you could find on YouTube, because YouTube was blowing up, and I was watching like tutorials as well, and just like practicing on Sundays, and like doing as much as I could to become like the best dancer I could be. And my coach definitely recognized that. He recommended that I enter these solo competitions. It was just like individual boys from each team, and usually it was like one or two like representatives from each team would go. And my first competition was like the biggest one of the season. There were 4 guys in the competition, and mine was definitely the most different style, for sure.
Through incorporating gymnastics?
Well, just I guess breaking and gymnastics were very rare amongst like all of the teams except ours, because we had a coach who really kind of like encouraged learning like the classic styles. So a lot of the dancing that the other teams would do were more like pop related, or like jazz funk influence, you know. So it wasn't very masculine, which was pretty interesting. But yeah, so there were 4 guys who entered this competition, and there were only 3 trophies you could get, right? And so they started with 3rd place. I forgot what school 3rd place went to, and then they had 2nd place, and I don't know who 2nd place went to. And so then it was just like, it was
2 people
left, me and someone else, and I was just like, well, I don't know if mine was any good, because I didn't, you know, my style is so different, and you know, like I messed up a little bit sometimes, and like I kind of freestyled more of it than like I actually practiced. Because I finished making the music that week. Like I had to make my own music and like make the routine. Like everything was my own doing, and I didn't practice that much because I was literally cutting music up until Thursday because the competition was on Saturday.
You were dealing with that part of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and like I had so many song choices that I wanted to do, and I just made like this like super long performance.
Epic
Yeah,
performance.
I think it was like 3.5 minutes or something like that, something crazy. And my coach didn't give me the rules, so it turned out that there was a 2-minute limit.
Window?
Yeah, and like if you went past it, you got like deductions or whatever.
Oh.
And so, so I was just like waiting there like to hear the final results, and then they called my name, and it was like the coolest thing ever. Like everyone on my team like went crazy, and they were like, "Dude, this guy's a sophomore, and he just won probably the highest like accolade you could win at that competition."
Even with the deductions.
Yeah. And then like when I saw my score sheet, I was like, wait, I got a deduction for like messy hair and like for going over the time. Like I didn't even know these were the rules or like that was the criteria. I thought it was just the dancing, you know?
Yeah.
And like I think the team I was on was probably one of the best experiences like I'll ever have.
And were you able to continue your dancing in college? And
I was.
how did that happen?
Yeah, so like by the time I was a senior in high school, I had won the Miss Drill male solo competition. I think maybe not 2 years. I know I placed 2 years for sure. I won Mr. Street Dance, which was a separate competition, once, and I got a 3rd place 1 year as well. So I had all these trophies, and like I was making things on YouTube, and I was getting like a bunch of views too. I made when I was a junior, I made this handstand tutorial, and it got like 18,000 views, which is like not a lot, but to me that's like
That's
super
a lot.
crazy. Yeah,
I would be blown away.
and
by that.
it was funny too. Someone from the comments was like, "Hey, are you the son of the guy from Matt's?" And I was like, "Like what a small world." But yeah, I was just doing like as much as I could, and like people knew who I was. So when I ended up going to USC, someone who was on one of the dance teams there kind of reached out to me ahead of time and was like, "Oh, hey, like a friend told me about you and said you were coming to USC, like you should join our dance team, like this is the best one of like the 3 you can join," right? And so I was like, okay, that sounds like a no-brainer. And so I ended up doing that team. I ended up doing another team at the same time that was a freestyle team, so it was more low commitment. The other team I did was a competitive one, so we also did collegiate competitions amongst other colleges and dance companies. I ended up joining a service fraternity when I was a sophomore, and like I think a couple semesters down the line of that, they ended up doing.
What's a service fraternity?
So it's just like a social fraternity.
I see.
Like a Greek fraternity,
Sure.
but instead of doing like a bunch of social events like parties, we would do community service.
I see.
So a lot of our service events were tutoring kids in the neighborhood or having like food drives or making sandwiches for people on Skid Row, stuff like that,
That's
right?
great, yeah.
And so one of our core values is fellowship, and so that meant being brothers with people in our fraternity, but also fraternities at other schools. So there's like a chapter at Long Beach, Irvine, Riverside. There's some at Cal State Fullerton, and then like that's just in California. There's like a bunch like worldwide. I know in the Philippines, like being in that fraternity is like a really big thing.
Yeah. It definitely, I had never heard of that, and it definitely improves the image of fraternities in my mind.
Yeah, no, it was super cool because we also had like our version of parties too, or like invites where we'd go clubbing and stuff like that. So, it was a cool one to be in.
Is that your dad? I think I hear your dad coaching next door, right?
Yeah, he's teaching the kids right now.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, really?
I think he usually is the loudest with the kids because they need the most
hear
structure.
what he's saying. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you were in this fraternity?
Yeah, and it's cool. They have this this fellowship event. It's an IC competition, which is like an inter-chapter competition where each school builds a dance team out of the members of that service fraternity, and we battle it out, right? And so I ended up like helping coach that team, and I wanted to be on the team for one of the years, but I didn't have the time for it. But the team ended up winning third place at the first competition they went to, actually, which is like a huge thing.
It's huge, yeah.
Yeah, usually Irvine like is like at the top, and
Yeah.
like one of the other schools.
It's like they're pretty set because
Yeah.
they have a history.
Yeah,
and then it's
they've been there for
It's
years.
like the upstart team showing
Yeah.
up and placing.
Yeah, so that was like a huge accomplishment on the USC service fraternity side. And so like I would always like be involved in dance teams throughout college. And then my senior year, I joined another team called Breakthrough, which is a performance only dance team, so no competitions. But what I really enjoyed about this one is that anyone could join and put a piece in the show. So if you came on like your first semester, as long as like 5 people wanted to do your dance, you could put it in the showcase. And like that's the one thing we worked for, right? Yeah, so the first semester I joined, I pitched this idea where I was like, I'm a really weird person. Like I'm half Japanese, I'm half Mexican, and those cultures kind of don't really go together. Like I'm a dancer and I'm an engineering major, and those two things don't really go together. But things that don't go together sometimes have like the best results,
Absolutely.
Sometimes in genetics they call it hybrid vigor, where two unlike things come together and they actually have the capacity to adapt to an environment better. And so I was like,
I love this thinking. We need more of this thinking in the
Right?
world right now.
Definitely.
We desperately need it.
Yeah, so that was my pitch to the team, and I was like, what I want to do, I was like, check this out. What I want to do is I want to combine like old school hip hop and like very dynamic breaking with very old music. So like Etta James and like Frankie Valli and like a bunch of like those era artists.
Things a lot of those people your age might not be so aware of.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm mixing like 80s dance moves with like 50s, 60s music, and then I'm presenting it to like a crowd of millennials. Let's see what happens, right? And I ended up getting the numbers to move forward with this dance, and I thought it was really cool. A lot of people told me like that was like their favorite dance because it had like a story. It had like very unexpected music. The dance moves were the most unique out of like all the other performances. And so I think with that in mind, like I was like, okay, I think I know my brand well enough. I know who I am as a dancer, and I know what I can give to people. And I ended up doing that team for a couple semesters more. Even past graduating, I was able to stay on the team.
That's
because,
great.
Yeah, they're very
They couldn't say goodbye
welcoming.
to you.
Yeah. So like from freshman year to senior year of college, I was consistently dancing.
So this was just up to a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Even,
Yeah, last year.
Yeah. Well, which sort of brings us to the current time frame.
Correct.
And Dance Refuge.
Yeah.
So I just want to get some information for people. Where is Matt's Gym and Dance Refuge located?
So the address is 1146 North Vermont, Los Angeles, California, 90029.
And that's just like a block north of Santa Monica Boulevard as well. So really Silver Lake, right on the edge there, getting into Hollywood a little bit.
Yeah, it's close to the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles and Los Angeles Community College.
And you don't need anything you can drop in pretty easily. And do you need to call ahead to come to a class, or can you basically just drop in to a class?
Yeah, you just show up. I say get here like 5-10 minutes ahead of time, just so you could, get prepared or fill out whatever information you need to.
And for more information and contact information, that kind of thing, what are the websites?
So they're pretty simple. For the gymnastics side, matsgymnastics.com, MATS gymnastics.com. And then for the dance studio, it's dancerefuge.com, how it's spelled normally.
And that's a good place to go for class schedules and
contact information,
and contact and cost and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks so much for doing this today. This has been awesome.
Thank you for having me.
And so thank you, Matthew Mori, and thank you, everybody. This is Philip Harrison. Thanks for joining.